BRICS surpass G7 in terms of economic growth, you think?
Well, I think that there's a real discussion here that goes well beyond economic growth.
Pakistan has applied for BRICS membership despite India roadblock.
Obviously, Pakistan has had a very long-standing relationship with China.
But Pakistan, I think, has sought help from Russia, right?
I would not be surprised that they're reaching out to everyone to get support, but China and Russia are key in trying to lean on New Delhi to try and to basically get a more flexible position.
Hi everyone, my name is Sukanya Saha and you're watching The New Indian. Our today's guest is very special. Mr. Ayham Kamel, he's the head of Eurasia Group's Middle East research team and leads coverage of regional geopolitics, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf Cooperation Council, Iraq, and the Levant areas. Hi Kamel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so you know that Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt will be joining the BRICS grouping, which already comprises Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and they'll be joining since 1st Jan 2024. So how does this expansion of BRICS into the Middle East impact the current global power dynamics, particularly in relation to the G7 nations? Can BRICS surpass G7 in terms of economic growth, you think?
Well, I think that there's a real discussion here that goes well beyond economic growth. I think that there is in the global south, or the so-called global south, an effort to gain or create a forum where there's an actual discussion on politics, economic cooperation, and trade and development. And that is well beyond the forum that currently dominates, which is the G7. I think in the Middle East, there's probably a real debate for some of these countries. Saudi Arabia is considering the membership. The UAE has welcomed it, and Egypt has welcomed it as well. I expect this to be a forum that's not necessarily designed in any way to replace the G7 or the G20. This is a different sort of setup or structure, one that will probably work in parallel with the other institutions or the other alliances that already exist. My expectation is that there are still open questions as to the fate of this alliance, who wants to participate to what extent, and sort of the dimensions that different member states would expect in such an agreement.
So, how might the BRICS membership enhance India's diplomatic ties with the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and especially Iran, considering the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Well, these are very, very difficult and complex geopolitical times that we are witnessing right now in the Middle East region in particular. I think that the war that we are currently witnessing in Gaza will probably stretch into next year and complicate some of the sort of headlines more globally. But on a structural level, a lot of the Middle Eastern countries that you have mentioned are interested, are keen on developing broader relations with India, economic and political, and a discussion that is broader than what currently exists. I am not of the view that the divisions within the Middle East and North Africa region, and there are divisions, tensions between Iran and some of the other countries. I am not of the view that those are going to undermine what is really quite a deep and structural debate between the Middle Eastern countries and India on enhancing cooperation. In my view, this has been really a process that is maturing. India has been improving its relationship with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE as well. And we've seen really a development across the board, a transfer of sort of not only meetings, but we're looking at investments that have actually materialized in India. We're looking at not only an energy-centric relationship, but a relationship that transcends energy. And I think there is something broader when it comes to the Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia and the UAE in particular, on the geopolitical front. Saudi Arabia and the UAE see India as a valuable ally in an effort for these countries outside the West to enhance their power and influence in the global system. So India very much has a lot of leverage within that framework. There is, in my view, a renewed effort to do that on two structures within BRICS and bilaterally with India directly between different members of the Middle Eastern governments that you have mentioned and the Indian government itself.
Do you think Iran, which according to several experts is playing a major role in fueling war in the Middle East, will gain an upper hand in the war against Israel after joining the BRICS?
I think joining the BRICS is a long-term development that maybe on the margins influences Iranian behavior. But structurally, Iran and its position in the region, that strategy is set by a different part of the system, by the Supreme Leader's office, and I think that will continue regardless. The Gaza war and regional activity, I think, need to be separated. Iran's regional allies, Hezbollah, the Houthi movement in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, those have different sets of relationships with Iran, and to a certain degree operate semi-independently of Tehran. So in part, Tehran is coordinating or talking to all of its allies, but it does not completely run the show. This war will between Hamas and Israel will end sooner or later in the next year. And I don't think that you can point to a very clear sort of victory for Iran, given the sort of human casualties and the destruction that will exist in Gaza. So it will not be an Iran that emerges in a much more powerful position.
But given the historical regional differences, how likely is it that Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, and the UAE can collaborate effectively within the BRICS grouping?
Well, that's a great question, and I think that will be one of the primary challenges for BRICS as an organization or as an alliance. It is much easier to coordinate with a small set of states that are well aligned or semi-aligned on a few issues. The new BRIC Plus framework, the BRICS Plus framework, is much larger and requires, I think, a more challenging set of negotiations to reach any form of consensus. That extends to the Middle East, but it extends also to China and India and their own relationship. Within the Middle East, the Gulf countries and Iran have had strategic differences over geopolitics for a very long time. The relationship has begun to improve in the last year, and I think that there are promising signs on that. There are other forums where Iran and the Gulf countries, the Arab Gulf countries, cooperate. OPEC Plus and OPEC framework is an example. At all times, there was energy cooperation and discussions there. So I think that there is prospect where you do not let all of the regional issues cloud cooperation between Iran and some of the other countries in the region within the BRICS Plus framework or a new organization. That will require, obviously, a decision by also some of the existing members to try to ensure that the system of decision-making that emerges out of this larger organization has mechanisms to keep the debate focused on cooperation and on issues that aren't contentious.
So, what geopolitical factors do you think played a role in selecting Saudi, Iran, Egypt, and the UAE in the new BRICS members?
I think when BRICS existing members looked at the region, there had to be a sort of a balancing role to get the more influential states to participate in that organization. It's almost a de facto choice to think of Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Saudi Arabia as one of the most important energy producers in the world. It's unimaginable for me not to capitalize on that. The UAE is a major trading partner for a lot of BRICs countries, but also is a global center for trade and investment and business activity. So it made sense from that perspective. And of course, Egypt is at a crossroads of different continents. It has a large population, one of the traditionally more influential Arab states. So its membership also makes sense. And in light of that, of course, Iran has traditionally held close relations with a lot of existing BRICS members. So I think this came about in terms of getting powerful members or inviting powerful members in the region to join the organization. For me, it is unimaginable that the Gulf countries would not be a key part of that appeal, given their global influence or rising influence.
So, considering that Saudi Arabia and Iran and the UAE are major oil producers, how do you anticipate the entry into BRICS impacting global oil trade and policies?
Well, that's a very interesting question. For the Gulf countries that are major oil producers or gas producers, my expectation is that there will be an effort to keep discussions in different forums separate. Saudi Arabia is the key engine of the OPEC and OPEC Plus framework. And I think that they would like to maintain control of that sort of mode of cooperation separately within that forum. Although Russia, which is a member of BRICS, is also part of BRICS Plus. My expectation is that the Saudis would try to keep several forums open, the G20, OPEC Plus, and potentially, if they accept the membership in BRICS Plus, also within that framework. So I don't think energy policy is going to be a critical aspect of how Saudi Arabia or the UAE look at the BRICS Plus framework. I think economic cooperation and global trade is going to be the priority, enhancing that, looking at ways of enhancing trade and investment amongst those countries. And remember, this is an invitation at this point. We still have to, there aren't a lot of details on how the framework would be set up and how the voting would take place and in what way, shape, or form.
So this is actually one of my favorite questions. Pakistan has applied for BRICS membership despite India roadblock. Do you think it will get the membership also? What does that mean for New Delhi?
Well, it's actually a very difficult sort of conundrum to face, because current existing members of the organization need to approve any new members entering. Now, obviously, Pakistan has had a very long-standing relationship with China that has helped it over the years and could help in terms of BRICS membership. The gateways in my view to any sort of compromise on that has to be that discussion with India. India is a gateway to sort of any conversation around Pakistan membership. I suspect China might be supportive of that, but it's going to require a lot more than one state to support that entry bid in any serious way.
But Pakistan, I think, has sought help from Russia, right?
Pakistan is helped from Russia? Apologies?
Yes. Pakistan has sought help from Russia for BRICS. Yeah.
So I would not be surprised that they're reaching out to everyone to get support, but China and Russia are key in trying to lean on New Delhi to try to basically get a more flexible position on Pakistan's membership.
So, Argentina, which was previously supposed to join the BRICS, has recently said no to BRICs. Amid an economic turmoil, do you think it would be a foolish decision for the Javier Milei-led government to turn down BRICs?
So in general, I think that discussion over the policy for the new Argentinian president, I think we're going to have to wait and see for what actual policies are implemented at the end of the day. There's a recalibration process in terms of policy, and that recalibration process has taken place almost immediately after him taking office. So I think we'll have to wait and see on what actual policy will emerge out of Argentina in the near future.
So this is my last question. After the BRICS expansion, who do you think will emerge as the leader of the global south, India or China?
I don't think that there will be any one leader of the global south. I think the mode of cooperation requires that there are multi sort of powers that have influence over different domains. I would imagine that it is very difficult to talk about the global south without either India or China. And to a certain extent, the expansion of the club, the BRICS Plus club, is partly recognition that there needs to be a larger mode of cooperation with other countries rather than just intra competition between India and the South, India and China for the global South. There'll be cooperation on different issues, and even India itself is positioning itself, as you well know, not only within the global South, but as a country that has also very good relations, productive relations with the West as well.
That's it. Ayham, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Thank you so much for watching us, guys.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Good speaking with you.
For such fine news breaks and video features from ground on your mobile phones, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, The New Indian, by clicking on the bell icon. Also, follow us on the social media handles on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and Co.